Demakes, a term used to describe games that have been crammed onto lesser, usually portable hardware. The selling point and justification for a game being heavily downgraded is portability. You can play Doom Eternal on the go, that's great, but my goodness, the graphics. The number one thing that usually takes a hit is the graphics, and I do believe this is the best way to go about it. A smooth and stable frame rate is always preferable. Doom has had a lot of demakes in its time. Doom and Doom 2 were ported to the Game Boy Advanced. Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal were both ported to the Switch. All games have long lists of compromises, but were and still are some of the only ways you can play these games portably. So in that respect, they're fine. However, imagine you port a game to mobile, but then God said, as for why I find this so amusing, well, your guess is as good as mine. Plants vs Zombies for the DS, the most unnecessary demake in the history of unnecessary demakes. The original Plants vs Zombies, released in 2009, was ported to iPhone a year later, and a whole year after even that, it was finally ported to the DS, featuring pixels you can count. I mean, from a distance it's fine. All things considered, they did alright with what they had. The DS first debuted in 2004, and for the power on hand, the port is pretty well done. It's the why that doesn't make sense. It's already on iPhone, better graphics, and of course being portable. Well, my guess would be the install base of the DS being so large meant it was a no-brainer to move the game to the system. Similar to how you'd see basically everything ported to Switch regardless of its practicality. The DS had 150 million lifetime sales, which is difficult for any games publisher to ignore. So now that we've at least tried to make sense of this madness, let's amuse ourselves some more, shall we? Plants vs Zombies for the DS is pretty much a one-for-one port for the original game, feeling like a port of the mobile game more than anything else, as everything can be accessed with just touch controls. Looking at other AAA games ported to DS, the trend was not actually to port it to DS. The Call of Duty games, for example, differed quite a bit from the console releases, really only sharing the name and release date. Here we got the original game, for the most part, squished into a small cartridge. Now to answer the burning question on everyone's mind, does it have any DS-specific features or modes? Well, it has a level where you can blow on the mic to cool some plants down, and there's a crow that flies around the top screen, and it sometimes stacks bodies. For a game that technically started life on the DS, there isn't anything that makes good use of the hardware's unique features. Plants vs Zombies started life as an Insaniquarium sequel, a game from what I understand is a fish farming game involving aliens. The sequel was originally dreamt up to use the DS and its dual screens for some interesting gameplay. One thing led to another, and now we've got a slightly altered version of Brainiac Maniac to fit on the DS. Along with the sprites, other compromises took the form of downgraded music, where you can't just taste the bits, you can hear them too. Most tracks sound the same, but some like Brainiac Maniac and the title screen music sound altered even beyond the conversion to DS. In the end, it's still some of the most fun you can have compressed into a small game, just looking a little worse for wear. There's slightly altered UI to make it easier to view on the DS. The screen does feature the level progression, which I guess is cool, but it wasn't really that obstructive. This game does feature 2 exclusive minigames not found in other versions, though they could easily be done in other versions. The game only lets you use up to 9 seed packet slots instead of 10 for some reason. My guess would be system limitations, but that feeds into that apparently this version is more difficult than others. I didn't really pick up on that while playing, and yes officer, I did beat the game, but the experience seemed almost the same. So it's as standard as a port can be. I just, for some reason, find it incredibly amusing. And what's this? A version released specifically for the digital content distribution market on the DSi, which is its own slightly altered version of Plants vs Zombies. Even though the DSi was merely an updated DS and can play all DS games, including everyone's favourite, there is a DSiWare exclusive version, which differs from even the DS version. The most prominent of which is the DSiWare exclusive minigame Zombie Trap. Other differences include the removal of a lot of content. Puzzle mode, survival mode, Zombatar, the Zen Garden and Versus mode are all not present, and before you riot, this game isn't available anymore, as the DSiWare store has been long dead. I thought the DS version was pointless, but here we are. A version exclusive not only to the DS, but specifically the DSi. I know no one's losing their mind over this, but Plants vs Zombies DS rabbit hole was a lot deeper than I expected. Still very amusing though.